Welcome.
To the joy of coding.
Hello, and welcome to episode. Wow, my camera. I just realized, I noticed this whenever I don't know why things moved around. Let me just quickly resize. Why is everything shifted? Why shifty? Why shifty? And I'm somewhat out of frame. I don't know what happened there. Let me quickly change the cropping. Sorry about this. I'm doing this live. I'm doing it live, gang. All right. And well, hello and welcome to episode 429 of The Joy of Coding. My name is Mike Conley. So good to have you here. Going to be live hacking on some Firefox stuff. Going to see how it goes. Things might go wrong. My OBS might suddenly decide that my camera is different. I guess that's possible. And that's okay. We're just going to deal with stuff as they come. Let's start by sharing my screen and we can talk about what we're doing today. Yeah, it's February. Look. Hold on. What is wrong with me? All right, there we go. OBS, what you doing? There we go. And relock. Lock everything. Okay. A reminder, no plant survives breakfast. I think I know what's going to happen today, but I also might get really tiny in the screen. And that's okay. We're going to deal with it as it comes. Yeah, happy February 11th. If you celebrate Valentine's Day, that's coming up. So that's that reminder there. Yeah, no plan survives breakfast. I think I know how today is going to go, but I could be surprised. I could be sidelines. You can already tell I've been surprised. Not only was I surprised by this stuff, I was surprised. Matrix had a little hiccup earlier, so the bridge wasn't working properly, but it looks like it's working again. Yeah, and apparently it looks like I'm being eaten by a dog. Very good. But we're going to just deal with stuff as it comes. That's the first thing. The second thing, the agenda that we're looking at. If you're watching this on Air Mozilla, the link to the agenda should be over there in the details section. If you're watching this on YouTube, it should be down in the video description. If you're watching this on Twitch, it should be down in the channel details. And as I update the agenda, this little spinny will spin. And if you reload the page, you'll get the latest and greatest. Let's see. So, today's episode is a 429. Episode 429 is brought to you by HTTP error code 429, which Keanu.codes gave us this image to go with it. Let's see what that's all about. Service unavailable. There it is. Too many requests. There's some irony there. Too many requests for that's what 429 means. And clearly we're seeing Keanu being overwhelmed by what appear to be a bunch of golden retrievers. At least 1, 2, 3, 4 gold. Maybe this might be the same golden retriever as this one. I don't know. I'm gonna guess so. So 1, 2, 3, 4 golden retrievers on top of Keanu Reeves. Puppies, what can you do? Let's take a look at what 429 too many requests means. The HTTP 429 too many requests client A response status code indicates that the client has sent way too many requests in a given amount of time. So this is for rate limiting. That's good. This mechanism of asking the client to slow down, slow your roll, client, is commonly referred to as rate limiting. Right. A retry after header may be included to this response. I'm floating away from the bottom of the screen. Hold on. Let me fix this again. There we go. Jeez. A retry after header may be included in this response to indicate how long a client should wait before making the request again. So implementations of rate limiting vary. Restrictions may be server-wide or per resource. Typically, rate limiting restrictions are based on a client's IP, but can be specific to users or authorized applications if requests are authenticated or contain a cookie. So this is just a way for the server to be like, hey, that's too much. I can't deal with all these requests. Slow down, try again in so much amount of time. So here's an example where there's a GET request being sent to example.com/report/mdn, and then the example.com server responds with too many requests, and it wants you to retry in 60 minutes, which is this many seconds. 60 times 60 is 3600. So the retry after header is in seconds, and it's saying try again in 60 minutes, which is a long time. It's like don't come back for an hour. That's a lot. Too many requests. But But yeah, there you go. If you're running, maybe you've got your own little bespoke HTTP server and you're doing some bespoke rate limiting, you could consider using this response code for if you're doing your rate limiting, because that's what clients expect. I'm seeing some chatter. Let's see here. Okra says, hello. Add split view feature is awesome. I'm so glad you like it, Okris. I used to split Twitch into stream and chat since I have to reload chat window often due to disconnects, and with split view, I don't have to reload the whole page. I'm so happy to hear that, Okris. I really enjoy split view as well. I believe the plan is to have it go out in 149, which, if we take a look at what train is it now, Nightly is currently 149. The release day for 149 is in 5.5 weeks on March 24th. But if you want it sooner than that, you can either use the Nightly build. I'm using Nightly. I've been using Nightly for years. Come join us. The water's fine. Every now and then, Nightly gets a little, there'll be like oh no, like something's broken. But it is remarkably stable given that it is like bleeding edge software that is built twice a day. So you get lots of updates. You get an update twice a day. But you're getting the latest and greatest, including things like split view. And 148 is currently on the beta channel, but that also means that 149 will go to the beta channel on February 23rd. Well, February 25th is when the first beta will be built. So if you actually want to try split view, but you don't want to go all the way to Nightly, you might consider trying beta, Firefox beta, or maybe you're already on Firefox beta. It should presuming all goes well in the next couple weeks, it should be available in beta 1 of 149 whenever it goes out. It's included in 149. So if you are like Okris and could also enjoy some split view, you have a couple options here. And the worst case scenario, if you are on release, then 149 hits release on, again, March 24th. So it's not too long a wait. So there you go. Let's see. I've talked about this. We've talked about the chat. Vadamon says, human beats AI in puppy recognition and counting. I hope so. What did AI say about how many dogs are here? It might say that there are no dogs here. That what we have here is Cerberus, which is, I guess, was Cerberus? Would you call Cerberus a dog? Cerberus is there's a single creature here with 4 dog heads and a Keanu head. I don't know whether or not AI would be good enough to add image recognition to understand what's happening here, but try it and let me know. Okay, so a question came in through the forum last week. Oh, Okra says they're on 149.0A1. Great, you're riding the bleeding edge. Congratulations. Are those side tabs on the left? They sure are. I've been riding vertical tabs for a long time now, and that is available on all channels. If you right-click on the tab strip, there should be here, let me launch the browser and I'll show you. Okay, so this is the classic horizontal tabs that have been shipped for years and years and years. If you right-click on this blank area, there is turn on vertical tabs, which will turn this feature on, and you can also drag items in here to pin them. And there's a new tab button here, and you can also configure it. Like the way I've got it is if I go to the gear icon, I can expand the sidebar on hover, and then you close this, and then you can get your tabs that way. I also find that if I don't like to show my bookmarks toolbar, and then you can get the look. Also, that animation, I find for myself anyways, is a little slow, and there is a way to control that. If you go to vertical tabs, expand on hover is true. Maybe it's sidebar dot animation, expand on hover, delay and duration. I like to have this actually really quick. I have it down to like, I don't know, 150, and I think maybe even 100 milliseconds. So it's nice and quick. And then I think I've reduced the delay as well to maybe 150. And then, I can just go like whoop, whoop. So those two prefs, in case you care, I'll put them in the in the chat here. Vertical tabs have shipped last year. Here are prefs for controlling the expand behavior. So this one, the delay duration, and then the other one is duration of the actual animation for expanding. So there you go. Oh, heck yeah, says No Good Nick. And why is there even a delay? Why do we add latency to user actions in general? And the answer is, well, sometimes the user doesn't actually want the sidebar to open if their mouse hovers over here. So for example, let's say I open up the DevTools and I move my mouse to like click on this button, or maybe there's like a link down here and I move my mouse this way, and let's say that the delay was like really short. Let's say 10 milliseconds. And I'm like, okay, I want to click on this button. Now this thing's in the way. Now I got to put this away. Now, like I can't do it. So like stuff, you in this particular case, it was deemed necessary to have a little bit of a delay so that people could like more precisely target things that are happening close to the edge of the screen. So there you go. Because like what we're doing is we're covering those things. So if you're having to, like, it's a balance. It's like not everyone has the greatest fine motor control. Mice are really great at like fine precision targeting, but if your hand is, maybe you have a harder time choosing something to the edge but not quite over, then suddenly having this appear over top is a real pain, because it's like you can't click on the thing that you wanted. It's in your way, so you have to move back and then try again, and that's very frustrating. Vatamon, so I've hopefully answered your questions. Okay, I understand, but do you remember how Amazon solved their menu submenu navigation? If the mouse left the menu bounding box but was navigating towards submenu, the menu wouldn't close but wait until you reach the submenu. Yes, the cone. So that's how that worked. If you were so if you like go this way, I think this is how like pop-up menus have generally worked, but there is no cone here because like the entire edge of the window is the shape of the cone. So like I don't know how that would work, because let's choose an example where let's go to the CVC. Let's say I wanted to click on sports here, and let's say I don't have the finest motor control, and I go to click on sports and I miss. Now, how do I choose? And like now I've accidentally opened a new tab because I double clicked here. Now, how do I choose whether or not the user is trying to go to sports or is trying to hover this tab strip? How do we know that? If we just know that the mouse is coming into, like, this is the information you have. The mouse is tending towards this direction. Detect when the mouse slows down over the sidebar. Yeah, but you're still waiting. Like, how long do you wait for the mouse to slow down? You're still adding a delay. I don't know. Design decision. This was the one that seemed to work best in testing. How about I say that? But there's a rationale. And if you don't want the delay, get rid of it. If your motor control is fine enough, go for it. All right, let's keep going. Someone asked about how the whole of Firefox testing infrastructure works. Well, great question. That covers a lot of ground. We have a lot of tests. If you take a look at, wrong browser, gang. If you go to treeherder.mozilla.org, you can see this is like the tool that we use to visualize all of the testing and building and all the jobs that occur. Our CI jobs. This is our tool, and it's very overwhelming. There's a lot of data here. It's very cryptic if you're not used to it. It's like, what the heck am I looking at? But the long and the short of it is that this whole block is a single push. These are the two commits in the push, and these symbols on the right represent individual jobs that ran for that push. Some of them are coalesced based on a category, and we use a lot of acronyms here, which is not great for readability or comprehensibility if you're new to it. It is very good for information density, which that's what I think has been optimized for. It's not like general consumption. It's been optimized for condensed information at a glance. How are things going so that our tree sheriffs and our engineers can get a sense of how healthy the tree is. And right now it looks like the tree probably was closed recently due to a test failure, but it's still closed, but they're waiting on test coverage to sort of fill out before they open the tree again. So we have a lot of jobs. Like each of these represent, like some of them are build jobs. The B jobs represent build jobs, but like these are DevTools tests, and these are, what are these? Browser accessibility tests, XPC shell, JavaScript unit tests, tests that use the Node JavaScript engine for some reason. We have what are called browser Chrome tests that instrument the browser, drive it. It's almost like Selenium, except it's not external. And then we've got like the Marionette tests. Marionette tests are a lot more like Selenium. Where are the Marionette tests? Moki test. Where's Marionette? Do we even have any listed here? We don't run every test every time. There's a sort of probabilistic, based on the changes in the patch. Some models will choose which jobs should probably run. That's like a cost savings measure, because there are so many jobs. And then whenever you merge from Autoland to Central, that's when we run all of the jobs. So this is like the full complement is what shows up on Central here. And it's a lot of jobs. So that's the first piece of information. There's a lot of different types of jobs, and within those, a lot of different types of tests, and within those, lots of tests. Okay? So that's the long and the short of it. And our machines that are doing the builds aren't necessarily the ones doing the testing. We have Linux boxes that I believe are running in GCP that we will spin up to run tests. And we have like I don't know if it's a Docker image so much as a description exactly of what the machine should have installed. And we there's a little bit of like, for cost savings, we will keep certain machines alive, or we will shut them down based on whether or not it's cheaper. Like there's all this cost balancing stuff that happens to choose whether or not you spin up a new one or you reuse an old one that's already being used. That's like release engineering infra stuff. So we have Linux machines, we have Windows machines that do the similar, and then we've got Mac OS machines that I believe we actually have in a data center. We've just like big racks of Mac Minis, because I don't believe GCP allows us to rent time on Mac OS machines or something. I think that's still the case, is that we have Mac Minis like sitting in racks in a data center somewhere, and Task Cluster is sending jobs to them. Okay, so I've given you a very high level overview of like the world of testing, that there is this like constellation of tests that run. And within those constellation of tests and those tests will run, like some subsets will run, some will always run. There's a overlap that will run on every single platform. That's the majority, will run on every platform, but every now and then you get certain tests that only make sense on Windows, and some tests that only make sense on Mac OS, some tests that only make sense on Linux, and some tests that only make sense on Android or iOS. Well, actually, iOS isn't included here because iOS isn't in the tree. iOS is not a Gecko app. And Firefox for iOS is using WebKit. Where am I going with this? Where am I going with this? This is like an extemporaneous description of our testing infrastructure. Okay, so what test frameworks do we use? Well, a lot of them are pretty homebrew and have been sitting available to us for a long time. They were developed like long ago, and we continue to maintain them. One of the most venerable is XPC shell. XPC shell is basically, hey, give me the SpiderMonkey JavaScript engine and give me XPCOM, but don't give me any UI. XPCOM is the component object model that Gecko uses. So give me access to the internals of Gecko, but don't give me any like browser windows, don't give me any UI. And what XPC shell is generally good for is testing individual parts of the backend. Like Gecko, you can do unit testing, but also it can run other things. Like you can run a small web server using XPC shell. And so some of our other tests use it. You can almost think of XPC shell as a precursor to Node. It's like, here's a JavaScript runtime that has access to some extra stuff, extra powers, and it can do a variety of things, and you can use it to run tests. And it's using the SpiderMonkey JavaScript engine. That is one type of test. The other type is we have a set of tests that use a framework called Moki Test, which inherits from a web framework from long, long ago called MokiKit. Or MokiKit framework, which I don't know if it still exists. Does it still exist? MokiKit. Yeah, it's still out there. It's no longer affiliated. Control was lost due to an acquisition. So this is from long, long ago, MokiKit. MokiKit is feature complete, so not a whole lot going on there. But back whenever testing was first being stood up for one of the first versions of Firefox, I would guess, when, after it had been opened up by the Mozilla project, and they were getting a little more serious about testing, they were like, well, we should be able to test our web stuff using a web framework. And so MokiKit was a framework that existed at the time, and it also included a test framework, and we pulled the test framework from it, and we use that. We have heavily modified it, but that is that is kind of like the lineage there. Do they have MokiTest in here? Does anyone use this stuff? Interestingly, we're not listed here. But like, read the docs. MokiKit, Moki. What do they have for test? Test. Simple test runner. So this is 2006 MokiKit based simple test runner as a replacement for Test Simple. Yeah, we have that's the framework that we use. This framework that's like 20 years old, but we've like heavily modified it. And let's see, here's an example. There are 3 different kinds of Moki tests. There's what we call Moki Test Plain, which is a test that would run in the content area, and it's going to exercise like a web API. Like, we might have a Moki test to see whether or not, if you put a video element in the page, whether or not the video you can call play and pause on it. And then there are extra powers that we expose to the framework that allows it to do things like do privilege things like set prefs and whatnot for the test. So Moki Test Plain is generally for testing web platform stuff. And then we have another level, which is called Moki Test Chrome. And Moki Test Chrome's job is to make it so that you can test individual UI components that are used in the browser UI. It's almost like UI testing, a UI unit testing framework is Moki Test Chrome. It is similar in that it runs in the content area, but it runs it in a sort of a special mode that allows us to put more privileged things like certain like widgetry that wouldn't necessarily render in HTML. We can render it inside of the content area using Moki Test Chrome. And then we have something called Moki Test Browser, which is very dissimilar from Moki Test in general. But what it allows us to do is send, like, you're basically executing JavaScript at the same level as if you were like executing JavaScript from the console here. So you have full access to like the browser object, like the top level browser object, to like open tabs, close tabs, navigate a tab to a thing. It's like kind of like a light Selenium, except that it's running within the browser context. Vadamon writes, the icons are so 2014 too. Haha. Yeah, you're right. Like MokiKit, honestly, it's not like, this is from back in the day, but we have so many tests written with this stuff that trying to convert it all, at least by hand, would be a monumental task, and currently there are bigger fish to fry. The tests still do useful things. It's not like just because the test framework is old, it means that the tests are no longer valid. It does mean that whenever people start contributing and they have to write tests, they're like, what is this thing? There may come, like, what has historically happened is that people will come around and go like, this is an old framework, or all of these frameworks don't allow us to do a thing. And then they add a new framework, and then new tests are written for that framework, but the old tests remain. So then now you have another new testing framework. And so that's why we have so many testing frameworks. Let's see, automated testing. Let's take a look at the big table of different types of automated tests and like look at all of them. And each one is because someone was like, we need a new framework because the old one doesn't work the way we need it to do. Oh yes, please, someone take care of the spammer, stupid firehouse sec SCZOQ or whatever. And yes, Smurfy, Chrome in this case is not the other browser. Chrome is an old school way of referring to the surroundings of the web content. Google confused everybody by naming their browser Chrome. So yeah, there are like reference tests that will compare screenshots based on what's generated with some like JavaScript or HTML. There are crash tests. These G tests use the Google C++ testing suite for testing our C++ stuff. XPC shell. These are the Moki tests I was telling you about. We have web platform tests that actually are shared between us and other browser developers. Like we all run the web platform tests. And that allows us to make sure that we're like compatible with one another. Like it's no good if every web browser has like web platform tests that are all slightly different from one another, because individually they will pass, but then like browser like incompatibilities creep in. So we have this shared web platform tests set that is used by other browsers as well. And as new web standards get standardized, or they go through the standards process, one of the jobs is, okay, we'll add tests for it in the web platform test repository, which are then imported by all the browsers. And then those browsers' job is to like, okay, implement those things. If you agree with the specification, implement it to spec and implement it so that the tests pass. Marionette is a little bit like Selenium. Vatamon writes, is this a software industry first? A common set of tests, which is not just some external paid for certification. I don't know if that's an industry first. Web browsers are weird. Certainly they're, I don't know how old people are on this call, but there was a time when like every web browser, back whenever MokiKit was maybe more relevant, and you had things like jQuery and Prototype and MooTools and like all of these different like TurboGears was a web framework. I'm talking about like JavaScript frameworks. These tools were often, they offered ergonomics, but one of the primary things that they offered was browser compatibility shims. So you could like write your scripts in one way, and then the framework, the UI framework, would take care of talking to Firefox and Safari and Internet Explorer at the time. And that was an Opera at the time, because the browsers would kind of disagree with one another, and like this, they wouldn't necessarily all be at the table designing an API, or they'd implement it kind of differently from one another. And so these frameworks kind of acted as a shim layer to deal with these kind of differences. I think these days that's a lot less of an issue. Like, it is still the case that not every browser implements every web API, but if they are going to implement it to the standard, then like there is a standard that you're supposed to follow. And in the platonic ideal case, the browsers they all sit at a table, there's a standards group, and someone says, I think this is a good idea, we should do this. In the platonic ideal world, the other browser vendors go, yes, that's a good idea. And then we all kind of like work together. Our standards body will work together to come up with an API and a specification that all browser vendors agree with. It goes into the test suite, and then each browser is then responsible for implementing it to meet the specification. And what's really interesting is in the past couple of years, there has been an effort to kind of do it in lockstep with one another. And this is called Interop. So Interop is an initiative that is, you've got representatives from, I think, all of the browser, like all of the major browser engines are represented here. You've got Gecko, Blink, and Safari. And, there are... the browsers as a group will pick and choose, like, these are the standards we're going to work on in this year. So like right now, I think Interop 2025 is more or less closed out, and there's still work to be done to figure out what is going to be targeted for 2026. I say that realizing that we're in the second month. It's not perfect, but a selection of things to work on will be published and will be part of the Interop 2026 selection. And then the browsers work to complete all of those things before the end of the year. And that way, this wide variety of web APIs and web specifications that the browsers have agreed upon may also within the same year implement it. So that way you're not like, oh, it's implemented in Firefox, but Chrome hasn't done it, so I'm going to wait until they finally get around to it, or vice versa. Like, by focusing on kind of timing as well as specifications, you can get stuff out, and then in theory, if everyone scored well, and it looks like in 2025 we did quite well. It looks like Edge and Safari. It's interesting because like Edge uses Blink, so I don't know what happened here, but Safari was a little bit behind, Edge was a little bit behind, but everyone on the whole did very well, and we're like in the high 90s. And on the experimental branches, it looks like they're just like maybe they just haven't published their updates yet, but like across the board, the Safari Technology Preview and Edge Dev, they're like 99% across the board. So great job, every browser. Thumbs up, thumbs up. And Chrome and Firefox currently are at 99% on the release channel. And then soon, and these are what we're part of it in 2025. So it's things like backdrop filter, core web vitals, the details element, various changes to layout. And you can read up more about this. You know what? Let me put this in the document. I'll put this in the agenda in case people care. Interop. Now, I'm not part of the DOM team. I'm not part of the Interop group. I just watch it. I'm a big fan. Periodically, I will review things that are related to this. The Web Compat team could tell you a lot about, but it uses Blink. Yeah, I mean, so here's... Shout out to web developers. You're doing great work. Thanks for being there and making stuff on the web. Try and make it so your stuff works on every browser. Now, I realize some of the features that you might want are not necessarily available. Like, I don't know, I'm going to pick one off the top of my head. Web Bluetooth is not available in some browsers, particularly Firefox. If you take a look at our standards positions, you can sort of see where we've made explicit choices on how we feel about certain proposals. So let me put that in here as well. You can see our standards positions and whether or not we think we're going to go ahead and implement a thing. And then we also say why. So for example, let's pick one. Probabilistic reveal tokens. I have no idea what this is. But this is the standard. Privacy sandbox is being phased out. So okay. We didn't, it seems like we were negative on this particular thing. Let me find a different one. Async contacts. Something that I can explain. Digital credentials, private access to the page, embedded permission control. I don't know what that is. Element capture. Let's see what element capture is. Element capture. Pre-existing mechanisms such as get display media allow web applications to initiate screen capture if the user chooses to capture a tab. Mechanisms like region capture mutate the resulting video and perform an operation on all subsequent frames produced. Element capture introduces a new mutation mechanism which we name a restriction. When an application restricts a video track to a given target element, frames produced on the restricted track only consist of information from the target element and its descendants. Phrased differently, the track becomes a capture of the DOM subtree rooted at the target element. And we were negative on this for what reason? Let's see. Oh, I have to do SSO. Hang on. It doesn't want. Okay, it doesn't want my key. All right. And I don't know what this is. But you can see the conversation here about how we're feeling. We're straying a little bit off topic, says someone, in 2023, so this hasn't really moved. Web USB. Let's take a look at Web USB. Web USB. We are negative on that. And here, rationale. Because many USB devices are not designed to handle potentially malicious interactions over the USB protocols, and because those devices can have significant effects on the computer connected to, we believe that the security risks of exposing USB devices to the web are too broad to risk exposing users to them or to explain properly to end users to obtain meaningful informed consent. It also poses risks that sites could use USB device identity or data stored on USB devices as tracking identifiers. So there you go. This is a perfect example. Thank you, Danny Colin. Of us being like, okay, and here's why we don't think we should do this. We're not going to do this. So, not every web platform test is going to be, I'll bet you there are web USB platform tests, And I will also bet you that we're not passing any of them because we chose not to implement WebUSB, at least not in its current incarnation. And the interop, I think part of the selection criteria is making sure that whatever is selected, the browsers all agree that, like, okay, we're all positive on doing this. It's just a matter of now timing. Wow, got really off track there. So I don't know what else to say about testing. Now, I mostly talked about automated testing. I will also say that we have people, we have like a team of a QA team whose like specialty is testing our browser. They've been using it for years, and they test it. They know how it's supposed to behave. They know how to tweak it just so to make it crash or to make it misbehave. They know what engineering teams tend to forget about, so they're like probing it manually. They'll do manual tests. And so there's the automated testing layer, there's the manual testing layer, and then you have the user community layer. So we've got people using Nightly. I'm using Nightly right now, and every now and then a bug will slip through that made it through CI and it made it through maybe a layer of QA. Although sometimes QA is operating on the Nightly branch, so bugs will slip into Nightly. And then it is sort of the responsibility, or it is the expectation, that people on Nightly who see a bug will report the bug. That's kind of the value exchange of like, we will give you access to this pre-release thing that is bleeding edge, but here's the cost. It's a little less stable. You're going to get the latest and greatest, but it's maybe a little less stable. Stuff might get turned on and then turned off again while we figure it out. It might not be the final form that's going to go to the release population. We hope and expect you to report bugs that whenever it's misbehaving, so that we can like get it corrected before it flows out to the release population. Something that was kind of a pain in the butt. I don't like, this is just I don't think there's anyone at fault here. And I wouldn't cast blame on anyone anyways. It's not my place. I've certainly let stuff slip through before. But Firefox 147, if you take a look at the release notes for 147, one of the things that we did was we made it so that we support the XDG base directory specification on Linux, which is great. That is very, very great. Good stuff. Now we're behaving like other applications on Linux desktops. The problem was that anytime anyone there was maybe a miscommunication in how this should be tested, so that it wasn't clear, I think, and it wasn't tested in automation either, that clients would only use the .config/Mozilla directory if a .mozilla directory in the home directory didn't already exist. And so in order to get to this point where you're actually using the .config directory, you had to blow away the .mozilla directory, or like launch a brand new, pave over install of your operating system or something like that. And I don't think that was clearly communicated. And so this went through all the layers of testing and no one caught it. And what happened is people on the release, and it went through Nightly and it went through beta, and we didn't really, we had gotten some reports of like certain things behaving funny, but I don't think anyone had really connected the dots on what was happening. This goes out to the release channel, and suddenly we get these reports of like, new tab is blank, like new tab is not showing up properly. Also, the user Chrome scripts aren't working properly, like something's going wrong. And what we realized is that the content sandbox rules hadn't been adjusted to make it so that you can access the profile directory when it exists inside of the .config folder on Linux systems. And so we had to quickly spin out a fix, 147.0.2 actually, which was released in the end of January. So just a few weeks ago, fixed those issues of with the base directory. So like you can test, and you can have automated tests, and you can have QA, and you can have Nightly, and you can have beta, but stuff is still gonna get through. Every now and then stuff still gets through. And that's software engineering, like nobody's perfect. And it's, no one likes it whenever a bug slips through to the release channel. That's never anyone's dream. It's certainly not my dream. And it is honestly, the most expensive time to fix a bug is when it's out in release, because we have to spin out a whole, like, we have to evaluate, like, is it worth the risk of spinning out a dot release? And then we have to, like, spin up all these processes to get a dot release out there. And in this case, it absolutely was worth it. We did that very consciously. But yeah, bugs get through. So I've burned like 44 minutes talking about testing. I don't know if anyone in the chat was the person who asked this question, who wanted an overview of how our testing infrastructure works. But if you're in the chat, even if you're not in the chat, maybe, what am I trying to say? I hope I answered your question. I have no idea if I answered your question. I hope I did an okay job. I certainly spent 45 minutes on it or so. So if I didn't answer your question, maybe ask for more details in the next time you rate this episode. To ask for me to expand on something, I'll expand on it. No problem. And man, we went down kind of not a garden path, but there was a lot to see. We stopped in on like all the different testing frameworks and tree herder and interop and standards positions. We covered a lot of ground there. So good stuff. Someone writes, it was very interesting. I'm glad it was interesting, Vataman. J Matrix writes, I found it interesting too. A lot of it is over my head, but it started to give me some orientation. Great. I'm glad, certainly no one would expect anyone to be deeply proficient in our testing infrastructure based on what I did over the past little while. But think of it as like a high-speed helicopter tour where you can't really get to know a city necessarily by being in the helicopter and looking at it for the first time from a helicopter, but you can get a sense of some of the big landmarks, like, oh, that's the CN Tower, oh, that's the Sky Dome, oh, that's a big highway running through your city. That is basically what I just did, was a helicopter tour. You really learn a city when you get on the ground and start using this stuff, or at least start reading it. And if you want to read any of our tests, I can give you an idea. You can go to SearchFox. Here, let me put these down here, and looking at some of our tests, and just like query for test, and you can see like a bunch of stuff is going to get returned. A bunch of stuff. Way too many results than I think SearchFox is prepared to, way over the limit. But this can give you a sense of it. Like, here are some test files. We have like these accessibility tests, and let me see ones that I'd be familiar with. Like the backup feature. We have a backup feature. And if you go into Browser Components Backups, you will see that there is a folder called tests. That's kind of the convention, is that within a folder, there should be a subfolder that's called test or tests. I've seen both. And within there, you'll maybe have it broken down by type, not always, but sometimes. And from within there, you can like read the tests. In this case, it's like making sure that certain parts of the browser settings work for restoring from the backup or whatever. Browser Moki tests always start with browser _ by convention. I think the framework expects that. Chrome Moki tests always start with test _ and their HTML documents. This is testing like the different backup UI components. Marionette is testing the actual process of like backing up, shutting down, restoring from that profile. Like Marionette is so close to like Selenium that we are able to like test restarting the browser and stuff, which you can't do in these other frameworks. And then XPC Shell is like, we have a lot of unit tests for the backup stuff. So here, I'll give you that as an example in case you want to read any of our tests. You might find those interesting. And we use, like, alongside some of the more ancient or bespoke things like XPC Shell, we'll also use like more modern things. Like, let me see if I can find an example of us using sign-in. Is it sign-in? Sign-on? I don't remember what it's like. Let's see. Yeah, we have imported the sign-in library. If you're not familiar with sign-in, sign-on, sign-in.js. So this is a helpful toolkit for spying, stubbing, and mocking stuff out in JavaScript. It's part of our toolkit for writing tests where you maybe want to test a particular unit without necessarily testing the surrounding integration or like the whole ecosystem. You just want to test like a specific unit. So there you go. We sometimes use some modern stuff as well, like Signin. But we also use our own, and like we use modern JavaScript as well. This is ECMAScript 6. Some of it is like very Mozilla-y, like Chrome utils. That is like a very Gecko SpiderMonkey privileged thing that you can't do in normal JavaScript. But other stuff that we'll do in here is like you'll recognize it from your from Java. It's JavaScript, which is some extra spice. Okay, so that's a big to do, or a big diversion. Let us now go into what I was hoping we could look at today, which was sorry, I'm getting pinged about something. Need to figure out if this is an emergency or not. One moment. Not an emergency, and not an emergency. Okay, good. I want to talk a little bit about updating NewTab's UI out of band from the rest of the browser. So NewTab is the front door of the browser, and we have I already talked about this? Maybe I already talked about this. I don't know if I've talked about this. I don't think so. I'm just looking through here. I don't see any notion of it in the last few episodes, so I'll just talk about it real quick. NewTab is the front door of the browser. Every region kind of gets a different look and feel. I'm in Canada. We are currently testing right now getting Canadian articles showing up in the stories section. This is from CTV. This is from CBC. It looks like we've got a bug here with the icon. I'll have to file later. But we've got other stuff like from Global News, and a lot of these, some of the sources are going to, like National Post and Edmonton Journal, it's being fed from Canadian sources. We're just starting to test that out. But every region kind of gets a different flavor of NewTab based on whether or not we know how to get articles in that area. Maybe we have some on-the-ground expertise. Like we've recently spun up a team of people who are like looking at Canadian media and trying to figure out how to get the stuff populated and organized properly, because there's just so much content. We crawl the web looking for interesting articles using what we learned from the Pocket stuff, and then we like categorize it using sort of fairly simple old school ML techniques for categorization. Then there's a human in a loop to just kind of like check through and stuff. But that needs to get set up for every region and every sort of language. Can you change the region in the settings by any chance? No, although that is something that, you know, that's not a bad idea. It might be interesting to know, like, what are the people in, I don't know, Brazil seeing, or what are the people in Japan seeing? I think part of the rationale for at least not doing that immediately is that there are certain things that may be not accessible based on where you are. Like you might follow the link and it'll be like, hey, this content is only available if you're in the United States, so sign in or something. And that's low quality. But it's not a bad idea, honestly. I think that would be very Mozilla-y to give people control over what region they're seeing. And then, you know, one thing you could do is you could VPN. That's an easy one. If you use the Mozilla VPN, a VPN client, and you go through, say, Brazil or London or something, then within a half hour or so, this stuff will kind of reconfigure and be like, oh, I guess you're in London now, and it will show you stories based on your region. So that's another way of doing it. You can control it that way. And at least in that way, it makes a little more sense, because if like the information, the article is kind of like region locked, it thinks that you're in that region even when you navigate to it because of the VPN. Okay, so what am I talking about? We're looking to make NewTab even more useful for people. Right now, it's fairly useful. You can search, although the search experience isn't great. The handoff thing isn't, I think it's run its course. We're hopefully this year going to replace that with like a full-blown search experience inside the NewTab. The search team is working on that. We've got top sites, places that you that you visit fairly frequently. We sort of try and configure this list smartly, but we also allow you to like pin and choose and edit which ones show up here. There's probably some improvements to be made there, but you can also like choose how many rows appear and whatnot. You can change the background, and then in some regions where we have stories, we'll show stories, and we've started to get them categorized properly. But there's more stuff we want to do. Like we've started to tinker around with widgets. Like the you can have like a timer widget that, you know, allows you to, you know, do Pomodoro or something. Or we've got this weather widget that's telling me right now that it's pretty cold. Not that cold in Toronto, but it's just around freezing right now in Toronto. But apparently it might go above. The forecast is calling for it to go slightly above freezing. That's interesting. And we want New Tab to be more useful for people and allow people to sort of like pick and choose the parts of New Tab that they want. It also means we want to be a little more reactive. New Tab almost looks like a web page. It's not a web page, but it's built using a lot of the same technology as a web page. It has more privilege than a web page would ever have. Like it has the ability to access your history, and that is why it is able to show these things. But it is carefully segmented so that Mozilla never learns your history, even when it's requesting stories and stuff. But we want to like make it more useful and try things more quickly. I can already hear people asking for a widget API for web extensions. We've talked about it. That could absolutely happen. We don't even know if widgets have any there's going to be any interest. Some people might be like, this is a doodad. Like, how many times have Microsoft tried and failed widgets? I think they're on their 8th and 9th attempt right now. It is possible that the widgets project on New Tab is not going to work out. That's possible. We're going to try some stuff. And if we don't want to create a whole ecosystem, if it turns out we're just going to can the widgets section, we don't want to destroy an ecosystem. So I think we would really only invest in a web extension API when we were certain we're going to keep it around. When we are certain, we're confident that there's utility and people, the broader user population, thinks it's useful. And then we would go, okay, let's design a stable web API that developers could use to like help flesh this out with things. But that is absolutely something we've talked about. But how do you move more quickly on something when we ship every 6 weeks or so? Well, actually, it's every 4 weeks. It's only been the last couple of releases where things have been a little more stretched out because of like holidays and whatnot. One thing that we do, and I think I've talked about this on the stream, is something called train hopping, where if you're operating on Firefox release, let me launch Firefox release right now. Today, we just went to 100% train hopping an updated version of New Tab. So if you go to About Support on release, if it doesn't show it today, it'll probably show it tomorrow, or it'll show after you restart the browser because it requires a restart. That this one's running New Tab version 149.1. such and such and such, and that's the date it was built. So we are able to update the New Tab code out of band from the rest of the browser, which is good, but it still requires quite a bit of QA. And you know, it can still take days. You build, you sign, then you hand it off to QA. QA tests it. Once QA is done testing it, we start deploying it. We'll deploy it at 25%, and then once we're satisfied that nothing untoward is occurring out in the wild, we would roll it out to 100%. And that takes time, especially because, you know, it requires a restart. It requires a restart to manifest. It takes a while for the deployment to kind of saturate out in the wider population. The QA, the manual QA, even though it's bolstered by a lot of automated QA, our manual QA is still finding stuff, and we have more work to do, I think, in writing our automated QA so that our the manual QA just tests the stuff that can only be done manually. But it still takes a while, and there's this like dream. There's this dream of having New Tab's UI, at least, be able to be mutable at the speed of the web, where you can make a change and publish that change and have it manifest on everyone's New Tab within the hour, within 30 minutes, basically. without having to restart the browser, and without having to ship an update, and without having to ship a train hop or anything like that. No signing, additional signing required. And so I've been thinking about this a bit, and one of my colleagues has been really focusing on this particular problem for the past couple of months, and we've come up with a design that we think makes some sense, using something called remote settings. Here, I'm going to sort of like describe the idea. It's probably not going to sound too crazy, but I'll describe the idea, and then we'll take a look at stuff that has been written to sort of support this. And now nothing's landed yet, by the way. This is still very early days. This is kind of a research project at this point. Excuse me. It would be nice to have all the stuff in the tab view page available on the new tab page as an option. I think the way it's presented there is much better. The tab view page available on the new... I'm not sure what you mean. The tab view... Do you mean like Firefox view? Do you mean this? Do you think this should be on the new tab page? Is that what you're referring to, Andrew016? All right, there's some delay here, but I'll wait until you come back to me. Yep, this one. Okay, so there is some interest in merging them. I think initially the idea was new tab's job is to take you forward to places, whereas View's design was for like, here's where you are or where you have been. And I realize that's in tension with the top sites. But top sites isn't always showing you places that you've been. Sometimes we recommend things, like these are sponsored tiles. These are like default top sites for your region. And then we also use your local history to sort of like create a list of suggestions of like, here, maybe you want to go here. And I think the philosophy originally was, this is for going back, and this is for going forward. But I think that hasn't really panned out. And so you're absolutely right. I think there's more to be done here. I think as well, now that we're starting to get the sidebar more fleshed out as well, I think there's room to take some of the things that are in here and put them in other places as well, like new tab. So I think you're right, Andrew016. And yeah, widgets. We've started to make it so that widgets can be embedded. And in theory, if the team that maintains Firefox View is able to like turn these into compatible widgets, we could embed them in new tab. That's possible. Okay, so what am I doing here? I wanted to talk. Okay, the design. So it's probably not that radical, but let me describe some of the pieces, and I'll start writing as I talk about it. We have a service that Mozilla runs called Remote Settings. Remote Settings. Remote Settings is what powers things like the add-on block lists and the safe browsing list and the graphics block list and all kinds of settings. It's where I don't think the CDMs are downloaded from it, but various things that need to be like pretty up to date are available using the service called Remote Settings, which the server is called Kinto. Let me show you the documentation. Remote Settings, Mozilla. Remote Settings. This is the inline documentation, but let me show you the documentation for Remote Settings at large. Remote Settings. Whoops. Remote Settings. So here's the documentation, and then let me also link to the browser documentation, front end documentation. This is like the client side documentation on how to use it. And then this is like the server side documentation on how to operate the Remote Settings service. But basically, we have an instance of this running, which every client is periodically talking to in order to get like the latest block lists and the latest graphics card allow and disallow lists and whatnot. And each of the entries, there's like it's very strictly schema'd. There's signing to make sure that no one's getting man in the middle. That if you're talking to Remote Settings, you're talking to Mozilla, and you're getting stuff that has been vetted, has been published, checked by at least 2 people, and it's being sort of like broadcast to the world. And there is a and as you always do, please keep the possibility to keep it very clean, new tab. Well, of course, like right now it is possible to keep it very clean. Like, let's turn everything off. And I believe there may be a pref to turn off search, but at the very least, if you want, you can go here and home and make the new tab blank. Or that's home, sorry, new tab's blank. And then it's just blank. Very clean. You can even change the default URL for the home page. This is like a little bit of a historical artifact. For a long time, new tabs in particular, home not so much, but new tabs in particular, were being abused by malware. And they were overtaking the new tab page whenever you'd install a piece of software on your machine. And so now if you want to like have we still want people to be able to like choose what they want as their new tab, but we exposed a web extension API so that if that's happening, a web extension that you configured yourself and has been signed by Mozilla is allowing that to happen. So the one I'm aware of is called New Tab Override by Soren Henschel, and this is great. This is very powerful. You can install this and it will override the default URL. Let me put a link to that also here. Okay, so here's our thought, or here's the theory, is that we will ship Firefox with a built-in version of the new tab markup, script, and CSS that will always exist in the build. But periodically, say every 30 minutes or so, or maybe every hour, it will check to see if remote settings has reported that there's a new copy of the CSS, JavaScript, and markup. Those things are kind of a unit. You need all of them. And if there is, it will download them and stash them in a local cache. And then the subsequent time that you then open new tab, we will, if those 3 have been loaded and we verified that they are of the the right shape, then we will load those instead on the next new tab. The idea being that we could then publish the script and the CSS and the markup to remote settings rather than like shipping a dot release or shipping a new signed version of the new tab add-on. You can just publish to remote settings, and we can do that multiple times a day. And I know that sounds like, whoa, holy cow, like that sounds like a great way of moving fast and breaking things. We would still be QAing all of this stuff. We would, however, also have the ability to roll back very quickly. That's the other advantage to this in theory, is that we could decide like, oh, turns out the thing that we landed, we forgot that in RTL, like RTL languages, it looks a little funky if you open this particular menu, it's flipped the wrong way or something. Like, okay, we roll back, and we can roll back within a half hour without having to spin a dot release or anything like that. And so that allows us to sort of like feel things out. And in the worst case scenario, we can send like a signal that just tells everyone, hey, you know what? Just use the built-in version for now until we get our act together. And we fall back to making sure that people have a usable new tab, but it also allows us to try more things in the wild, get more stuff out there for people to try, and we can get feedback on. We can get we can do some science with it. Like, do people find this useful? Do people ignore it? Do people find it annoying? Et cetera, et cetera. It's all about doing science. Okay, so that's the basics of the idea. Let me now go into some of the implementation of what I have locally, because I have some source code here. Whoops. Why is this all kind of like fuzzy? Let me stretch. Why is this window like, does ZSA, why are you, there we go. What is going, I don't know what's up with iTerm. I don't know what's up with iTerm, but it won't fill out the whole page. Oh well. Maybe it's also related to my camera doing that thing where I'm floating. I just moved myself down a pixel. But let's take a look at some source code. So what I have is inside of where am I? Browser. I think I'm in the wrong module. I don't want to be in components. I want to be in extensions. New tab. Lib. Nope, that's the UI libraries. I want this lib. New tab, cache. New tab cache manages caching of new tab content. That's the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS downloaded from remote settings in the Firefox HTTP cache. That is the plan right now, which is a high availability cache that we store your page content in as well. It seemed like this is a sort of like a purpose-built. Originally, we were thinking we could potentially use the service worker cache, but service workers are designed, they're not really designed to operate with the same level of privilege that new tab operates at. New tab exists in a special state. It has a special, like service workers, a lot of it is keyed on the domain that the service workers was like sourced from, and the domain of new tab is like about : new tab, and our service worker infrastructure is like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what an about new tab is, or about home, or resource : / yada yada yada. It's like, what is that? So it's not really designed. It would have been nice because service workers kind of are, this is what you'd want if you were doing this for your own like web application, is you'd want to use a service worker to intercept the network requests and pull data out of the local cache. You'd have control over not only the cache of the page, but also the cache of any fetch requests, etc., etc. That's a great way of making an offline first web application or a website, is by using a service worker. And unfortunately, that's not available to us in the way that About New Tab operates. So we're going to have to do something a little different, which means the current solution we're looking at is the HTTP cache, and the sort of the awkwardness around it is that the HTTP cache is only available for reading and writing to from the parent process. But we can send streams down to the content process that new tab loads in to say, like, here, load from this stream, here, load from this stream, and that should work. So let's see here. It provides stale while revalidate semantics for instant loads with background updates, ensures atomic writes of all three files using version metadata as a commit flag. So what happens is we've got these like special, these are the sort of the special keys that we will use for saving these things in the HTTP cache. And then the HTTP cache itself is kind of this, it's an XPCOM mechanism that I'm somewhat familiar with because we've used it for other types of caching. Like the About Home page is read from the cache, the network cache on startup, if it exists there. And so I helped write that. That's called the About Home startup cache. And so I'm kind of reusing some of that same experience here. So the first thing we need to do, I guess this isn't the first thing, but like one of the things we need to do is to get the entry. So you can think of a cache entry as like, this is a handle on from the cache for a resource that we have cached. It's not the resource, but here's a handle that represents that resource that you can do things with. And so we first have to get, and if we're opening a particular cache entry, we will request it by passing in the URI that we want, and then we will say, hey, if we don't already have a cache entry, I think we say we want to create one, and when we find one, it's either going to be new. If we wanted one, it's either going to be new or not new. And so if it's new, then we'll, in this case, we're going to say, yeah, the cache entry, like there's no data here. Otherwise, we will resolve with the entry. So the first thing we do is we're going to get the cached entries for the markup, the script, and the style. We'll wait for all three of those to resolve. And if they don't all exist, then we return null. If they don't exist. And then if any of them are empty, then we will return null. So what this is going to do is it's going to return cache entries for all three content types if they exist and are all valid. Does not doom stale entries, serves them, and triggers background revalidation. So once we've made sure that we've got the markup, script, and style, we will get the markup, script, and style version strings. We'll make sure that they all match. If they don't all match, we blow them all away. Something's gone horribly wrong. And if something goes wrong with getting the metadata or something, we just blow them all away. It's just like, nope, all this is no good. And then we will ask remote settings, like, what is the expected version for what we're supposed to be running right now? And we'll see whether or not that version is the one that we're expected to be running. And if it is not, then we will assume that it is stale, and we will tell the caller, hey, you probably should update the cache. And then checks remote settings for updates and fetches new content. So we will get the expected version that we want from remote settings, the latest version. And if the current version that we pass in is not the latest version, then we will go ahead and fetch the latest content, and we will update the content, the HTML, the JavaScript, and the CSS. And then we will tell the new tab everywhere that we have updated you. And then we are going to, this is how you write to the cache. So you get the entry, and then after you have the entry, you open an output stream to it, and then you write a string to that stream. And then we can also write a version, and then we'll also do a timestamp for when we downloaded it. And we close out the stream. And that entry gets written to the sort of the table that manages the cache. Finally, if we're going to update all, then this is how we go and get them. This is when we supply the markup, the JavaScript, and the CSS, and then we'll go and get them. And then this is how we can write a string to the output stream. It's a lot of like, streams are interesting in JavaScript. This is like an old school streaming model. There is like better streaming models, like we have something called like Streams API. Web APIs that do streams. This is all great stuff. You want readable streams and writable streams. Unfortunately, NetUtil and the cache backend was all written before any of that stuff existed. So instead of using the more modern readable streams or streams APIs, we're using sort of like callbacks and utilities like async copy, which are using pipes to send stuff around. And then this is how you can doom an individual entry. A doom just means like blow it away. We don't care about it anymore. And then this one dooms all entries, clears the cache entirely. This there's to do here, so I haven't done this part yet. The part that's still required here is we need to actually talk to remote settings. There's a question in the chat. So you're at the point in this new tab project where you're implementing. There was a feature idea. You discussed possible ways to get it done. Now you're implementing the agreed to specs. We are taking this idea and we're trying to get a prototype built. What we're looking at is prototype code, where it's more than just prototype code. We've got a prototype written that worked kind of outside of Firefox, kind of like worked in isolation. Now we're trying to adapt it to work with remote settings and within Firefox. And the idea would be to see whether or not we can get, we would have this prefed off by default, but we would see whether or not in the lab we can get it to properly update itself out of band. And then once we're satisfied that it's working properly, then we would start updating what's being published to match what's already in new tab. And then we would slowly start cutting people over, like a transition probably to updating this way, and then the features rolled out. So yes, there is a kind of a high level design. It's like an architecture, a system architecture. And it's been my job to kind of like do the client part here. I'm seeing more chatter. I have a few, but it's only Mozilla made. Bitwarden and developers I know personally. And then someone writes uBlock Origin. Great add-on. Great add-on. I don't think so. It's 2:19 right now. We don't have too much longer. I did want to briefly talk about how one talks to remote settings, because that is kind of the next step. Maybe next week we can actually get some stuff written now that you're kind of familiar with the project and the problem space. But when we do have what's called a remote settings container or bucket that has like a dummy entry that we're testing with. And what we have on the client side of things is we have a remote settings client that knows how to get from a particular bucket, and then it downloads it and allows us to like iterate it and deal with it. Let's actually see if we can query. I'm trying to remember where. I think it's in the staging version. Let's double check. So we have something called Remote Settings Dev Tools. Remote Settings Dev Tools, which is an extension that allows us to sort of like test some things with remote settings. Wait, yeah, I'm in the right version of the browser. Okay, download the XPI. Let's download it. Assets, Remote Settings Dev Tools. It was published last week. Okay, so this thing allows us to download. These are all the collections. That's what they're called, collections. And I believe this is in the stage version or it's in dev. I can't remember which. We download. And then there should be something that's like new tab. Wallpapers. Where is it? Let me find it. Hold on. Oh, you know what? I need to be VPN'd in order to do this. Hold on a second. I hope this won't disrupt the stream. I don't know if I've ever signed into the VPN before while streaming, so if this goes sideways, apologies. I got it. Two-factor. There's so much security. Hold on. YubiKey. Okay, I think I am now VPN'd in. Okay, let's try again. And then sign in. Sorry that you can't see this right now. Okay, so it's review, records, no records. So it's not on the staging server. Maybe it got put on dev. Where's dev? Amazon. There it is. Sign in. Hold on just a sec. I apologize. This will be... Okay. Okay, yes. There is a... how do I want to show you this? So right now, this is what I'm looking at. Here, I'll paste it inside of the notebook here. Attach a large image. Sure, resize it down. So right now we've got two records in there which refer to an attachment with a hash, and it was posted as a work in progress about a week ago. I wonder if I can query for this. So on remote settings dev, I just need to remind myself dev. So we're gonna sync, and then this is called new tab renderer, which is that even listed here? Normally these things are requested individually rather than like all at once, but I'm doing a full-blown sync, so this is gonna take a little bit longer. I don't see anything in here called renderer, but hopefully it'll... It's a work in progress. Approved. It was re-signed. It's using dev. Oh, maybe it's in stage. Is that why? They're not yet approved. Okay, hold up. Dev preview. Download. History. This is my first time dealing with the dev server before, so I'm not. So this was the collection was updated. Collection was created, updated, and signed. I can see the 2 entries. It's just like, where are you? Maybe if I go to this URL. Oh, expected a query string. Come on. Oh, no. I'm not going to do that. I wonder if this is failing because I need to supply it with some keys. Oh yeah, forbidden. That's what's going on. Well, oh boy, how do I do this? I may need to do this next week once I've had a chance to talk to some people about how this works. How do I? Because I don't want to publish this stuff, even on dev. Okay, well, you're watching me deal with this in real time. And that's part of the deal. That's okay. Would it work if I go through the V2 API? No? Yes? Do I? Oh, you know what? I wonder if I need to sign. Oh, this is completed. It's not listed. I wonder if I need to sign this browser into the dev server. Let me do that real quick. One moment. Sign to the dev server. Sign in. One moment. Okay, I am now signed in. Security key. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we do not mess around when it comes to signing into stuff. Okay. Now can I request it? Sync. Renderer. Polling server failed. API 1 dev sync. Oh, there, and it finished. Renderer. Why isn't it listed? If it's not in dev, it's not in dev preview. Sync. I think I need to talk to some people who have used remote settings before. Oh boy, I need to sort of figure out what's going on here. Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm sorry. This was I should have gotten this squared away and figured out before I brought it to the crew before I brought this forward. But hey, that's the joy of coding. So I'm gonna go ahead and log out of this session. Let me just figure out how to do that. One One moment, please. Log out. Done. Close. We're gonna figure this out for next time, I think, is the situation, and then we can see if we can wire up retrieval. I may actually have already wired up retrieval by the time the next stream runs around, and we can I can explain how we got there and how it works and what adjustments I've had to make. Okay, I think I'm gonna call it there. Sorry, I realized that was more talky than it was Cody, but hey, sometimes that happens. Let me know what you thought of the stream. There's a link here to rate this episode here at the bottom of the agenda. I will also drop that into the chat. I haven't looked at the chat in a while. Do you also develop the non-JS stuff on Firefox and stream? Yes, I sure do. Nice, Danny. Rate this episode link. Here it is. I've certainly written some C++ on the stream in the past. JavaScript, CSS, C++. I've done a little bit of Rust. On the stream. But nothing worth, I think, mentioning. But mostly what I'm writing here is JavaScript, sometimes some CSS and HTML, but if it's usually JavaScript, and failing that, then it will be C++. Okay, let me know what you thought. I dropped a link to rate this episode in the chat. I read everything that comes in, so go ahead and ask questions or clarifications or whatnot. If you were the one who asked this question and want more details, go ahead and ask it. And I think I'll call it there. Thanks again for watching The Joy of Coding. I hope you all have a great week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
The joy of coding.
See ya.